It's been half a year into 2026, and I've watched a lot of movies this year. Project Hail Mary is still my favorite one so far. I didn't walk in expecting that. A movie about a science teacher and an alien fixing a dying sun sounded like the kind of mid-budget original that gets lost in a weekend. It beat every expectation I had for it. No franchise behind it, no god or super soldier at the center of it, just a guy who used to teach 8th grade science trying to keep the sun from going out. Modern blockbusters run on a formula tight enough that you can predict a movie's shape before the trailer finishes. Every year the spectacle gets bigger, more CGI, more universes colliding, because somewhere the industry decided bigger automatically means better. Watch 100 planets explode across a decade of releases, and the 101st barely registers. The thrill doesn't survive repetition the way a studio budget report assumes it will. Familiarity replaced risk, too. Studios leaned into sequels and anything with a built-in audience, because an original story carries real financial risk. A fourth entry in an existing franchise doesn't. The same release calendar that gave audiences Project Hail Mary was stacked with a new Toy Story and a second Devil Wears Prada. Project Hail Mary ran with none of that. No franchise, no villain, and a hero who spends his first scene throwing up in zero gravity because his body remembers something his brain doesn't. It made $683.5 million against a $200 million budget, the fourth highest grossing movie of the year. Its second weekend dropped less than Oppenheimer's did. I remember sitting in the theater doing the math in my head before the movie even ended. No fight scene had happened yet, and the audience around me was leaning forward the same way I was, watching a man calibrate a centrifuge like it was the tensest thing either of us had seen on a screen all year. Every rule broken, and it still outperformed the movies that kept every single one running. The villain was the first one to go. Take away the villain, and the entire toolkit a writer works with changes underneath them. Astrophage doesn't hate anyone. You can't outmuscle physics or intimidate an equation into backing down. Most science fiction about the end of the world assumes people turn on each other first. Governments hoard resources, the crisis becomes cover for a different, uglier story. This screenplay assumes cooperation instead, treating global collaboration as the default response. Extinction usually makes movie characters worse. This one bets that it makes people better, and never bothers to defend the bet. Removing the villain from space turned out to require removing him from the ground, too. Grace never gets a shootout, not even in the back half, where most movies would find an excuse for one. Most stories about a life or death situation can't resist it. This one just doesn't need it. There's a version of this story where the studio casts an actual astronaut, and the whole emotional trick falls apart before it starts. Watching someone who looks like he'd struggle to open a stuck jar under pressure become the reason the species survives works precisely because he never stops looking like exactly that same guy. Swap Grace's job, and you get a different movie entirely. Make him a soldier, and every obstacle becomes something to shoot. Make him an astronaut, and the movie has to assume he's already competent, which leaves no room to watch someone learn. A teacher's whole skill is admitting what he doesn't know, then explaining what he figures out until it makes sense to someone else. That's the entire method Grace uses to solve every problem in this movie. The same sound wave demonstration he runs for his 8th graders, a speaker and a plate of powder, is what lets him build a way to talk to an alien who reads the world through sound months later and light years from that classroom. He never stops being a teacher. The classroom just gets bigger, until eventually the class is the whole species, and the only other student is an alien. Modern blockbusters solve their problems through power. This one solves every single one of them through understanding, and the teacher is where that starts. Action movies run on a rhythm. Something breaks, someone hits it. This movie replaces that rhythm with a different one, and it never once feels like it's missing the original. Grace's teaching background solves a problem most hard science fiction runs into, explaining orbital mechanics or microbiology without stopping the movie to lecture the audience. He spent years breaking complicated ideas down for distracted teenagers. When he explains astrophage to himself out loud in space, it feels like a habit he can't turn off. Even before Rocky arrives, the screenplay gives Grace someone to test ideas against, the ship's operating system he ends up calling Mary, avoiding the usual trap of a silent hero narrating his own thoughts to an empty room. None of the tension here comes from a chase or a fight. When a hero fights a person, you already have a rough sense of how it ends. Someone wins through strength or a good idea at the right moment. Grace is fighting thermodynamics. Nobody in the theater knows how a calculation error resolves itself, including the character running the numbers. That uncertainty is the whole engine. Grace asks a question, runs an experiment, and the experiment fails. The failure hands him the next question. That loop replaces a fight scene, beat for beat. The scientific method became the choreography. A man staring at a centrifuge for 2 minutes turns out to be tense. I've sat through worse chase scenes than a man trying not to spill a sample he can't replace. So I went back and timed how long the movie holds on Grace just watching numbers change on a screen, waiting for a result. It's minutes at a stretch, and the tension never drops. You're watching him try not to be wrong. The screenplay drops some of the book's grimmer survival details entirely. The coma slurry, the lab-grown burgers cultivated from Grace's own cells. Keeping the tone from tipping into body horror, the story never actually needed to make its point. None of that works if the movie hands its hero a gun. Remove the enemy, and the job stops being about strength. It becomes about asking the right question before the wrong answer costs him everything. Like a man who chose to be there. There's a version of this story that's just an ordinary guy dragged into a crisis he didn't choose. Every one of those movies gives him a moment. The phone call he almost doesn't answer. The door he almost doesn't walk through. One beat of doubt, then he says yes. He gets dragged into the one job he spent his life running from, unconscious for most of the trip there. Grace doesn't get a beat. He gets a needle. The movie holds one fact back until it's ready to change what every earlier scene means. Grace never volunteered for this mission. He refused, and the reveal only lands because Strat had the authority to override that refusal completely. The flashbacks run the same process as the lab scenes next to them, each recovered memory answering one question while opening another, the structure doing science on its own audience. Every flashback shows up because the scene sitting next to it is missing something it needs to move forward. Pull one out, and that scene stops making sense. The book has Strat forcefully sedate Grace just to get him on the ship, with the amnesia happening as a brutal, unavoidable side effect of the coma slurry. The movie softens Strat by a few degrees. That shift turns Grace's fight from a chemical wall into his own mind's decision to bury what it did. There's exactly one scene where Strat looks tired, a karaoke night the week before launch, and she's the one who ends up at the microphone. Sandra Hüller plays Strat as someone who's already made peace with being hated for the rest of her life, and the performance never asks for sympathy it hasn't earned. A cartoon tyrant forcing Grace onto the ship would read as villainy. Strat's exhausted, unglamorous version of the same choice reads as desperate math, which is a much harder feeling to sit with. The epilogue gives her one visual detail for it, a tattoo with a line through it, the film's shorthand for a life sentence served without parole. Nobody speaks about it. The frame just holds on it long enough for you to notice. Most screenplays don't know what to do with a woman holding this much power except pair her off with the male lead. This one skips that instinct completely. Hüller and Gosling have both described their scenes together the same way, built on respect for each other's brains, nothing romantic about it. That restraint is the only reason Strat never softens into somebody's love interest. Every act of courage you watched him perform in the first 2 hours, releasing his dead crewmates into space, choosing to stay behind for a friend, gets recolored the second you learn none of it started as a choice. I didn't catch any of this on the first watch either. It took a second viewing, paying attention to which memory surfaces at which exact moment before the pattern clicked. If you finish this movie feeling like the ground had shifted under everything you'd already watched, that feeling is exactly right. The structure withholds the one fact that changes what every earlier scene means, and hands it to you late enough that you have to run the whole movie back through your head to recalculate it. That recalculation is the actual payoff. Bravery in this movie is something Grace built one decision at a time, starting from a place of having none, and the biggest of those decisions doesn't involve another human being at all. Every other blockbuster alien contact scene defaults to a standoff, something to shoot or something to flee from. This one skips the standoff completely. Rocky has no face. Building a friendship on a character who can't do anything a face normally does to signal warmth sits close to the hardest problem screenwriting has. Rocky's arrival changes the register of the whole movie, a lonely survival thriller loosening into something closer to a buddy comedy, without ever losing the weight underneath it. That affection gets earned the same way any real relationship does, through the slow work of building a shared language before either of them can afford to feel anything for the other. The line that got the biggest laugh in my theater wasn't even written into the script. James Ortiz improvised it on set. Rocky hate Mark. 2 words, no context needed, and for 1 second an alien made of oxidized rock sounded exactly like a friend taking your side without asking for the full story. The final voice used multiple acoustic sources, and Ortiz ended up providing the finished sound himself. Special effects designer Neil Scanlon built Rocky as a full animatronic puppet at his creature shop in London, operated using bunraku, a Japanese puppetry style where a team of operators moves one figure together so precisely it reads as a single breathing performance. Ortiz drew on his own father's experience translating for a grandmother who spoke almost no English. At the first chemistry read with Ryan Gosling, he skipped the full-size puppet, bringing a glove version small enough to climb directly onto Gosling's shoulder, because he wanted the first contact between actor and character to happen through actual touch. Scanlon told Ortiz to approach the role the way Frank Oz approached Yoda, a full performance in its own right. Ortiz described Rocky's inner life as something like a brilliant calculator, wearing the anxious nerves of a 14-year-old who badly wants to be invited to the party. That choice is the whole reason the friendship reads as real. He's got weight climbing on him, resistance pushing back against his hands, a scene partner who's actually there. You can tell the difference on screen between an actor reacting to a person and an actor reacting to a mark on a stick, even when you can't name what you're seeing. The book has Grace Byrne himself saving Rocky. The film shifts the emotional emphasis, giving Rocky a more active role in saving Grace, and a friendship built entirely through shared labor gets to end with the alien doing the protecting. I've gone back to the scene where they first manage a real two-way conversation about 4 times now, and it gets me every time. What lands is how long it took them to be able to say anything at all. Give a character no face, and the audience has nothing left to read but the way he moves and the space he takes up in a room. Make that movement convincing enough, and a pile of oxidized rock ends up carrying more warmth than half the CGI companions built with a full range of human expression. Communication ends up being the engine behind every turn in this movie. Every real breakthrough, whether it's science, teaching, or friendship, comes from Grace understanding something, and the pattern traces all the way back to a classroom scene about sound waves that nobody in that room knew was foreshadowing anything. The frame keeps shrinking as the stakes keep growing. The movie opens on a planet, narrows to a ship, then down to just 2 creatures figuring out how to say anything to each other at all. By the time everything is riding on one decision, the camera is basically just looking at 2 faces, one of which doesn't have a face, and none of it happened by accident.
The refusal to fake anything ran through the entire production, too.
Cinematographer Greig Fraser built a Hail Mary's interior as a practical set wherever possible, relying on real colored lighting outside the windows instead of treating every exterior like a standard green screen volume. Skin picks up every wrong photon a composited shot throws at it. You can just tell. That's the reason Gosling's face looks like it actually belongs inside that ship. Fraser pushed the same logic into the frame itself. The aspect ratio tracks the emotional distance between memory and survival. Tight and soft for Earth, swelling into full IMAX the moment the movie needs you to feel how exposed space actually is. On set, the crew rigged blinking infrared lights behind glass and running water, invisible to the eye, and let a modified camera catch what showed up. A field of glowing pink light. That's the reference every effect shot of Astrophage was built from. The thing eating the sun in this movie started as an actual light in a room. Composer Daniel Pemberton built the score out of the same instinct. He recorded a leaking squeaky water tap in a friend's house on his phone and worked it straight into the mix. For the film's biggest set piece, Pemberton opens the cue with the sound of his own fingers tapping a wooden floor, and lets it build from there into a full crescendo. When Grace and Rocky finally understand each other, the music that plays is the one moment in the whole score that sounds completely unguarded. Inside the ship, the lighting was built to track a day going by, cool blue mornings fading into warm tungsten evenings, all of it real and adjustable on set. In IMAX theaters equipped for it, the space scenes filled the tallest screen format commercial CDs currently offers, built for scenes about how small one person can feel against all of it. Watching this in a theater with laser IMAX running, you can feel the difference between practical light and added light without ever consciously clocking why the picture looks the way it does. I didn't know why until I looked it up afterward. I just knew something about the light felt correct in a way I couldn't explain in the theater. The ship is real lumber under real light. The score is real fingers on a real floor. The same instinct that kept a villain out of the script kept standard digital shortcuts off the set and layered unusual organic recorded sounds into the score. Grace never takes the easy way through a problem in this movie. Neither did the people making it. Every other blockbuster that year kept trying to get bigger. Bigger threats, bigger universes to keep track of. Project Hail Mary went the other direction and got smaller on purpose. It shrank the villain down to a microbe and the hero down to a guy who used to run a classroom. The alien invasion became one lonely creature learning to count. Somehow, shrinking everything down that far is what made the stakes feel enormous. A dying sun is abstract. A friend deciding whether to save you or the mission is not. That's the trade this movie makes the entire time, giving up scale for intimacy and betting the intimacy hits harder. It replaced the villain with a puzzle and power with understanding, and by breaking almost every rule blockbusters run on, it ended up reminding people why they liked blockbusters in the first place. This started as two beings tapping out the number one against a hole, because neither of them had anything better yet. What you carry out of the theater is two creatures who don't share a face, finding enough common ground to laugh at the same dumb joke.
Thanks for watching. If you want more deep dives into movies that dare to break the formula, drop a like and subscribe. To keep exploring why your favorite stories actually work, click here for more videos. See you in the next one.